Hello, and welcome to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed. Here is the title of today's episode. Philosophical Midwifery, how it all began. So, as you know from the title, the sound effect, and the lovely backdrop, this is an episode on philosophical midwifery. Along with the channel, if you've been following along, we have been reading the Phaedo lately. Where we are up to in that series is recognizing the need for dialectic, the single most important or unifying or harmonizing within our soul activity we can be doing while we're here. This is something that we are learning from Socrates in his Doctrine of Philosophy that we are reading from the Phaedo. Super important. We are gaining an understanding of the meaning of life. Oh my God, there's a meaning of life. And there is a understandable, doable activity to achieve that. And there are verifiable experiences to prove or to verify what we are doing. Our understanding, not just understanding, but integrating of the dialectic. Understanding it and being able to do it. So, of course, we're not just trusting Socrates, we are matching him. We have to read in that way to read properly. If there is some sort of puzzle solving involved in being a philosopher, as there is, we have to be doing that to come to these conclusions and realize that Socrates is sharing the purpose for our existence, what we should be doing while we're here, and how important it is, both in this life and the next one. Oh my goodness, and what is this? The art of the dialectic. As we go, we're learning what it means to read. How do we discover these puzzles? How do we answer them? We're also learning what it means to think. How do we think in the right way? How do we think in an ordered, systematic, rational, beautiful, necessary way that allows us to reach higher cognitive functions, become better, become happier, reach more success? How do we think as philosophers or as human beings, if philosophy is the quest for all human beings to do? The true hero's journey, the meaning for all people, therefore the destiny for all people. So, what are we here for? How do we think? So how can we make the conclusion that there is a meaning of life? But also, what's involved in verifying that? This isn't just an opinion or a theory. If there is a truth, of course there is. If there is a truth of all truths, then it has to be verifiable in some way. This is what we're learning about in philosophy. What are the highest cognitive functions? How do we think properly, but how do we know? And is that a kind of learning that we can use to reach our most meaningful goals while we're here, including the purpose for our incarnation into a human form altogether? And maybe even understanding what happens after this life. So this is all of the quests that we've been on. Lots and lots of delicious questions. Of course, philosophy is about finding questions, becoming puzzled, and learning how to piece those puzzle pieces together to answer those questions in a certain kind of way where we are benefited. But because of how significant that is, because of how meaningful those goals are, it will necessarily trigger our blocks. Part of being a human is you don't begin on top of the mountain. You don't begin enlightened. You develop problems from a young age, and those problems get in the way of our learning. So we're here to learn, number one, and we're here to purify ourselves from our false beliefs, our problems. We all have problems. And those problems can get in the way of our learning. So if philosophy is the learning, what do we do about the problems that come up in our learning? What do we do? Well, there are lots of things that we can do. Give up, set a lower, less important goal, try to reach our goal without excellence, don't really read, don't really try out the activities, don't really practice the dialectic. Maybe even reaching your goal and not maintaining the goal. There are lots of ways of not reaching the goal or not achieving our goals. But what if we do want to achieve our goals? What if we're tired of suffering through the same problems over and over again and not reaching our highest goals? What if we're genuinely interested in our excellence, in thinking with excellence, in knowing with excellence, in discovering the meaning of life and achieving whatever that happens to be? What do we do about our problems that come up? Well, of course, in our reading, Socrates has given us some clues. Sometimes we can be harsh with ourselves, sometimes we can use threats, but sometimes we can manage our soul by having a dialectic with ourselves. What does that mean? How do we use the dialectic not just to learn what understanding is and to open our states of being to the higher dimensions of reality, enlightenment, and the meaning of life, but also to understand and remove our problems? Welcome to those joining in chat. How do we use the dialectic to solve our problems? Also, Socrates mentions dreams. He is guided by dreams, and he's guided by a daemon. So this question has come up for us. Number one, how do we remove our blocks so that we can reach our highest goals, particularly in our reading of Plato, of Socrates' words? How do we remove our blocks? Number two, how do we relate to ourselves in the best kind of way, beneficial kind of way? How do we understand the meaning of our dreams? How do we awaken or become in tune to the guidance of our daemon guides? And how do they communicate with us? And how are all those things related to the dialectic? These are big puzzles that we are carrying in our quest for philosophy, for sometimes called philodianoia, the love of understanding. And what's common among all of them is how do we use the dialectic to understand, to uncover, understand, and remove our problems. The formal way of doing that, or the way that has been formalized, is called philosophical midwifery. So this is the complementary art to true philosophy. If all of these things, learning how to read in a new way, learning how to understand the most important things, learning how to understand understanding, learning how to verify our understanding in direct experiences of reality, knowledge, nous, enlightenment. If that's half of the game, true philosophy, the other half has to be, well, how do we use that to remove the blocks to achieving those things? It isn't a straight line to the top of the mountain. There are stumbling blocks, ups and downs in the human quest to know these things. So, what do we do when we have problems? That's what philosophical midwifery is about. That's what we're doing. And that's the subject for this series. So welcome to everybody who's joining. Glad that you liked the first video. I am the voice in your head that does the dialectic. Awesome. Well, so long as it's guiding you to recognizing your own voice, or maybe what you're recognizing is something of, well, maybe it's not Jed's voice, but there's something of the self voice that I'm sharing in that you also share in. That's one of the questions in philosophy. Where is this logos and dialectic coming from? Is it a single source? Same thing when we do philosophical midwifery. When we reflect in this kind of way to uncover, understand, and remove our problems, what is doing it? Why is it that no matter who it is whose problems you're looking at, even though they're unique to them, we also benefit in some curious way? We can see something of ourselves in that person, in that problem, and in the way of solving that problem. Good questions. So, with all those questions in mind, in our back pocket, taking it with us, because that's a fun way of reading, let's jump into the text. And we have a blank screen. So, with my jumper off, let's jump into the text. So we read the opening acknowledgements last time. This is chapter 1. Let's have fun. The way it all began. I would like to share with you something new drawn from something old. We talked about this last time. The new paradigm. That can have a profound influence upon your life. Philosophical midwifery. Hooray!
Wow.
In the Platonic tradition, it was understood that philosophical midwives have the skill and art to assist in the delivery of those who were pregnant with ideas, just as midwives have assisted pregnant women in bringing to birth children. We are in need of this art. We are still in need of this art. So we recognize already, this is an art. For we are all pregnant with all sorts of ideas, and some of these ideas cause difficulties for us. Pause. So some of these ideas, oh, why is it not doing anything? Oh, I see what I'm doing. I see. Some of these cause difficulties for us. Right. Cause difficulties. It was thought that once these ideas were giving birth to, the same art could judge. Same art could judge whether or not they were true and genuine offspring. For if they were not, they could not stand the light of day. I'm highlighting key ideas that will help us come back to these sections, but also reflect our understanding that we are building in philosophy. Thus, in some cases, the midwife was prepared to speed up the delivery if the situation required, to assist, and if the situation required, assist in the abortion. Okay. I have adapted this Platonic idea of philosophical midwifery, and I have applied it to a new class of human problems. A new class of human problems. I have applied it to a kind of belief that has not been previously identified. The distinctive feature of this new member in the class of belief is that it is a false belief about ourselves. So this is key. It's a new member in the class of beliefs. As we learn, we look for key terms, we look for patterns, we look for ordering. These are the things we're learning about what it means to think and to be a philosopher. A philosopher would be applying this kind of thinking to the key terms of the self, reality, mind. Now, equally so, we can say there are key terms within the class of belief. We ourselves know there are scientific beliefs, there are prejudices, but there's a new kind of belief. There are, of course, supernatural beliefs as well. A false belief about ourselves. So let's highlight this. A false belief about ourselves let's see if my pencil works. False belief about ourselves. False belief about ourselves, one that we are not aware that we believe. Yet our actions are consistent with the unknown false belief. Now this is key. This is key because one of the things that we say in our current culture is, hey, isn't everybody entitled to their own beliefs or opinions? Surely no harm can come from that. So this art of judging that we just talked about is bad. Don't judge this belief as right or wrong, because aren't we all entitled to our own beliefs? Well, we can see here our actions are consistent with that unknown false belief. Beliefs matter. Our actions are consistent with them. In particular, these ones here, false beliefs. Further, these beliefs are irreconcilable with our personally meaningful goals. This is why we care. Irreconcilable with our personally significant goals. They are the cause of much of our frustration and suffering. Something we mentioned last time. These are all the stakes. Cause. They also said to be the cause of problems that confound and puzzle us. So why do we care? The cause of our frustrations and suffering, the cause of our problems. We call this kind of problem pathologos. Bum, bum, bum. There's our keyword, pathologos, because it's based upon a false or sick belief. This kind of belief can be called sick or false because it causes our failures and suffering. That's why we care. They are causal. Of what? Failures and suffering. So failures are to do with our goals or our activities. Suffering is to do with our state of consciousness or feelings or state of mind. These are the things we're interested in doing. We're interested in activities that meet our goals. And also we're interested in how it feels to do them. So, big stakes. It blocks our inner development. So it's a block. And what is it blocking? Our inner development. What we learn about, right? Sick words. What we learn about in philosophy, of course, that's the development. And makes us less than we can be. Makes us less than we can be. I have to pause for 1 second. Be right back. Since our problems are based upon a belief, one we didn't know we believed, they reoccur again and again. So we're seeing problems based on a false belief we didn't know. They recur again and again. Now this is key. Kind of problems that reoccur. Once they become recognized, their patterns can be predicted. To recognize them and to discover their source and power, we need to consciously study ourselves as we struggle to reach what is personally meaningful to us. So necessary in this quest is to reach what is personally meaningful to us. Therefore, what is, of course, that which is most meaningful to us, for all people, philosophy. Philosophy. For the pathologos emerges and becomes manifest when we seek significant goals and we try to, here we go, maintain. If you're reading along in the Phaedo, we have, the last episode was on maintaining our state of mind, maintaining our goals, and also Socrates asking the question, what maintains even the physical world? And another big idea in philosophy is not just maintain, how do we integrate? We don't do philosophy so we can become eggheads or argue or debate. We learn philosophy so we can integrate what we understand about self and reality into our way of being, which is what makes it a spiritual task. You integrate it into your state of consciousness or mind or being. Now, even in philosophy, there might even be a state beyond that, but that's a question. Socrates, of course, in the Phaedo points out this is the one true spiritual discipline. So, these problems only manifest, gives us the material we need to study ourselves when we seek our most meaningful goals. Right. Interesting. I have a Grimes and Jed on the one hand, but on the other hand, echoes of the past that now get debated into the ground with logos. Nice. That's what we're doing. Well done. Well done. And of course, using the language of Balboa on the one hand and on the other hand. Courage part to train and maintain. That's right. And so in philosophy, we learn about the virtues. We had a big question last time. What about the Stoic idea that the virtues don't have a goal? It's just for discipline's sake. The happiness that you get from depriving yourself from your desires. Well, we see that. Right, we see that we have to also have the courage to do this, to seek our most meaningful goals. We have to be developing a kind of wisdom to do with this kind of study of how to understand. We have to desire it. Hey, if we have a desiring part of ourselves, we have to be desiring this. If this is what helps us, using it. So these are all the virtues that we learn in philosophy to integrate and maintain what we learn. So there is no mystery about the origin of our self-imposed ignorance. There's no what? There's what? There's no mystery about the origin of our self-imposed ignorance and failures. Oh. What? There's what? Why do we have problems and ignorance and failures? There's no mystery. Wow. 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 Let's read on. Cynicos. Oh. The origins of these pathologos problems are understandable because they can be traced to our past learning. What we learned from the past leaves its mark and can be reconstructed. So, Anybody interested in punishments or even rewards, kind of? Rewards and punishments, or blame, or say that the devil did it, or say that people can't be saved, we need to blow them up and let God sort it out. We can say, oh no. Read the book. Read the book. What does the book say? There's no mystery about the origin of our self-imposed ignorance and failures. Really? They can be they are understandable. Really? Our human problems are understandable? Sure. Wow. Well, that would be a dramatic sea change. We would have to look at our justice system a little bit differently if we read the book. Anyway, fun to see how high our ceiling is if we get into this text. No need for rewards and punishment, or war, or suffering, or blame, or ideas of blaming the victims. People in poverty have to steal because they're bad. Wealth inequality exists because people need to pull themselves up from their bootstraps. That's right. They're not Elon Musking themselves hard enough to be, everyone can be billionaires. All this nonsense. No, we're not innately bad. There are causes of our problems. Let's keep going. Now, as we read, we can see it in the macro, in society, but also it's most important to apply it to our own souls. Why do we have our problems? Hey, one of our most meaningful goals would be to share this with the world, to bring humanity out of its ignorance and failures, its self-imposed ignorance and failures as well. But as we seek that goal collectively, as a species, then there might be blocks that come up that are understandable. Let's keep reading. So we develop our own souls as we seek that which is most important and meaningful. What we learn from the past leaves its mark and can be reconstructed. At the root of every pathologos learning, we find we had to say or do something. We had to say or do what was necessary to survive and adapt in crucial and dangerous conditions. By the way, our problems served a purpose. Not only is it stupid and mean to punish people for having problems, also it's irrational. Well, it's rational. It's missing the mark in that those problems were important. The problems were necessary to survive and adapt in crucial and dangerous situations. The thing that makes them problems is they no longer apply. So you should be rewarding people for having problems. Well done for having that problem. It was necessary and crucial for you to come up with this kind of solution when you first in the early days of your learning. No longer applies now. So what do? Put you in prison? Make you feel bad? Invade your country? No. Understand. Wow. What a harmonious, rational, humane way of being. The adaptation was successful. So well done. So our decisions were to that degree rational. Our adaptations were successful. So it was that in that way rational. At least for that particular situation. So there is a rationality behind the seemingly irrational problems we find ourselves in. Problem solvable. Yes. So one of the expressions we use, have fun with, is the rationality behind the irrational. Which, of course, if you see that reflective or ousia-like repetition, rational, the rationality behind the irrational, that's a fun pattern. What do we do when we have a pattern? Push the implications. Try it in other places. So, for example, we might be looking at in terms of our reality, there is an apparent injustice. There's many apparent injustices in our physical world, but in philosophy, we look to see not only the meaning of our individual lives, but all life. So our reincarnations and how that plays into our learning of the logos. What's the logos? The understandability, this word here, the understandability. If there is an understandability to ourselves, to our problems, to reality itself, then this must be what our reincarnations are for. So can we see, when we have that view of eternity, of the movement of our soul through our learning, can we see the justice behind the apparent injustices? Just like here, we are seeing the rationality behind the apparent irrationality of our self-imposed ignorance and failures. Isn't it irrational to be sabotaging yourself, or self-fulfilling prophecies of problems? Wouldn't you want yourself to reach your highest goals? Why then are we sabotaging ourselves if it's self-imposed failures and ignorance? That seems like we are irrational. Now, some people haven't learnt this art and therefore would conclude, therefore humans are bad or are broken or need to be cleansed from the planet or are less than the divine or something like that. Why? Because they don't see the rationality behind the cause of our problems. Right? Equally too for the injustices we see in our world. Today we call them black-pilled people or doomer-pilled people, doomers. Look at all the mountains of injustices we experience in this physical life, in this world right now, in this part of history, and we think, oh, there's nothing just in reality. So we need to see the justice behind the injustices, as we do in philosophy, as we do here, the rationality behind the irrational. In chat, I just remembered my dad would call people who dressed holes in clothes way bums. Wonder if he would say the same thing about Socrates. Right, Socrates isn't really interested in his appearance. In our last episode of the Phaedo, Socrates says, hey, don't spend your time adorning yourself with clothes and trinkets that are not to do with the self. Instead, adorn yourself with a love of learning that is more akin to the true self. That's what we're doing here, learning. Right. And another belief that's being shared in chat that we can all maybe relate to at some degree. This kind of work we're doing here, that's not meaningful. It's empty talk or navel gazing. There's some expression that I've heard used. You're wasting your time. You should be doing physical things because the physical is what's real, and there's no benefit in understanding or developing an art. So if these are the voices from our parents, from our past, from our early teachers, then we might have had to believe them to survive and adapt with those people when they had power over us, or we were beholden to them because we were little or young or trapped in some way. So, but that learning leaves its mark, and the early learning, the past learning, can be reconstructed and understood. So we have to surface them. And as we're sharing in chat, the more that we get into this awakening philosophy and reading the Phaedo, reading Socrates, the more these voices will come up that are being challenged by our participating in what's most high, what's most significant and meaningful. So, and this is what's being talked about here. Right. And the similar dynamics can be expressed in society, keeping people impoverished so people can maintain that irrationality, that tyranny. So, as it's saying here, when we seek our significant goals, then we can surface what we need to understand our problems. The only difficulty is that we continue, and this is the difficulty, that we continue to apply those decisions to, oh, this is a big word, analogous scenes. Oh my God, I'm just looking at the text. It's so rich. This author was so brilliant that every word is packed, dripping with meaning. And the more that we learn in the logos and philosophy, the more we see it. Analogous scenes blindly, completely ignoring that they are different situations. So that's our difficulty. We continue to apply that which doesn't work in an analogous way. What's analogy? Well, this thing is like that thing, right? Me applying for this job right now is just like when I wanted to have to be captain of the football team when I was a little baby. So therefore, what happened when I wanted to do better? My parents crushed me. Therefore, if I apply for that job, I'm likely going to get crushed because I'm applying a kind of understanding that is analogous but no longer applies. Okay. Thus, the nature of a pathologos problem is applying, here we go, key definition. Applying a solution to inappropriate situations again and again. Financial success and practical achievement, so different class of success, are not in themselves a measure that one is free of problems. Because financial achievements do not affect the course of one's inner life. This is key, inner life. We're going to end up highlighting everything. Since, coming back to our chat, practical goals are not sufficiently meaningful to challenge the continued existence of the pathologos. So, take this in your back pocket when that voice comes up and says, hey, stop with that thinking, with that philosophy, do a practical goal. We can say, excuse me, practical goals are not sufficiently meaningful to challenge the continued existence of a pathologos. So why the heck should I waste what little time I have on this planet doing that? Good answer. A pathologos is not the same as experiencing difficulties in life. This is also important. Not the same as difficulties in life. Because it is natural to experience some difficulty while in pursuit of one's goals. Encountering difficulties, however, is different from dealing with the pathologos, because while in the difficulties, one can learn and solve them or discover ways to avoid them. And it is this that is not possible with the pathologos. Okay, I think I've figured out my highlighting strategy. I think I'll do sections of the same color because every gosh darn passage is amazing. So look at this, it's a bit of a hodgepodge. So I might do a different color per paragraph. If you show an interest in an instrument, he has to tell you who is better than you, the man who doesn't understand what is uniqueness. Interesting. Right, that would be a good way of shutting you down. And it's common, like we can see this in each other. Like I learned from a lot of musicians online, and one of the most common comments in comment sections online is, I watched this guy who was really good, now I don't feel like doing it. I'll never be as good as that 14-year-old who can shred on guitar. But you're right, doesn't matter. Do you think you're here to, you think music is competitive? It seems like we are here to, one of the most important things is to pursue meaningful goals that sufficiently challenge the continued existence of the pathologos. We can learn from our mistakes in the one, but not in the other. So another key feature, we don't learn from our mistakes when we're in a problem. Thus, there are essential differences between exploring difficulties and the pathologos. So essential differences between experiencing difficulties and the pathologos. So we're learning more about what is this mysterious pathologos thing. So far, we've got a lot. It's something that it's a false belief. It's the cause of our suffering. It is irreconcilable with our meaningful goals. It's the cause of our problems that confuse and puzzle us. It blocks our inner development. We don't even recognize we believed. They recur again and again. They manifest when we seek our meaningful goals. They are self-imposed ignorance and failures. They are understandable. They can be traced back to our past learning. They were crucial and necessary to adapt in crucial and dangerous situations. It was successful and therefore rational. But the problem is that we continue to apply them. Blindly, as though other situations were analogous to that, even though it's inappropriate. They can only be surfaced when we pursue non-practical goals, because that doesn't really challenge the pathologos. Practical goals don't challenge it. It's not the same as regular difficulties. Why? Because difficulties are normal, and you can solve them or learn to avoid them and learn from your mistakes. So it's different from a regular problem. Right. What means harmony and sounds good? Harmony and makes it sound good. Right. Elevating the conversation. So when another way that you're dealing with difficulties in your pursuit of an instrument is when some voice comes in and says, you're not as good as Joe up the street. Why can't you be like Bill? He's such a nice young man. Why can't you shred like Bill, Joni's son? I wish you were more like him. You can elevate the conversation away from that by saying, what is harmony? Why does something sound good? You're inviting them into a higher level of functioning. So good answer. Inviting them into a higher level of reflection. It is only when these difficulties are of such a magnitude that they block one from achieving one's goals. They are the kind of problems with a pathologos foundation. The level at which one can surface a pathologos depends, the level that we can surface a pathologos depends on the significance of the goals one pursues. The more personally significant and meaningful the goal one pursues, the more visible the pathologos will become. So, one of the principles that we like to play with in philosophy is aim for the highest. Balloons. Shoot for excellence. Where's my confetti? Aim for excellence. Okay, just balloons. I want a confetti. Why? Well, because the more meaningful you pursue a goal, or the more meaningful the goal is, the more evident your pathologos become. Right? Really throws a different spin on things, because the opposite is also true. The less significant your goal is, the less you're likely to surface your pathologos problems. And if you're not learning the art, if you're not familiar with this, if you're not following along with this series, then why would you want to surface problems? If you haven't learned that we are here to surface problems, to benefit, to learn how to understand and remove them, then wouldn't you want to not trigger your problems, or rather discover ways to avoid them? So now we might understand why those people who are telling you in chat or you watching, don't pursue your meaningful goals, do something practical, put down that instrument, get a financial job or whatever they say. Oh, maybe it's because you don't want me to trigger my pathologos problems, because you don't understand that that's what we're here for and that they are solvable, and that solving of our problems is what is most spiritually meaningful. So you're kind of trying to help me. Like, don't wake the bear kind of thing. Let sleeping dogs lay. Maybe. So these are questions and implications and connections that we make as we read to make the text significant for us personally, to bring life into it. We're not just reading to be dry academics. We're trying to breathe life into it, see the significance in our everyday life, in our highest goals, and in each moment. By the way, in philosophy, we call that Apollo, the reading of the Logos, walking along hand in hand with Aphrodite, the inspiring beauty of seeing how it applies beautifully and meaningful to our lives. You need both to be in the game. That's why they are not just meaningful goals, they are personally meaningful. You can say, well, objectively, mastering reading the Phaedo and Socrates as we're doing, reading Socrates and mastering the dialectic, mastering philosophy is objectively the most meaningful thing you can do. Well, what if it's not meaningful to you? This is where the dialectic comes in. As we learn Socrates, as we read Socrates, you say, well, what are you interested in? Where are you at? What do you think about beauty? What do you think about God? You. Because when it's not just meaningful objectively, it also has to be personally meaningful. So there's a humanness along with the understandability. Both go together. Interesting. Sometimes I can... Oh, interesting. I can double click. Okay. The more visible the pathologos will become. Equally, when one desires to accomplish with excellence, excellence word, even a modest and seemingly simple goal, to the degree it is judged as meaningful and personally significant, it is possible to surface an aspect of the pathologos. Interesting, right? And in chat, we can also, this dialectic that we are learning, we can also apply to unpacking the significance of the problems that surface in our dreams. And in chat, people in the community that are following along are realizing, oh, I can gain a lot of benefit by, as I learn this in the text, Apollo, one way of making it Aphrodite, beautiful and inspiring, is applying it to my dreams that are very personally significant. They're yours. And they might reflect the intelligibility of our problems also. Curious. Dreams are mysteries, right? So, the more meaningful the goal, but also when one desires to accomplish with excellence even simple goals. So excellence, to the degree it is judged as meaningful and personally significant, it is possible to surface some aspect of the pathologos. So even if it's a seemingly simple goal, the standard I hear, which I don't like, is washing the dishes. I don't know, brushing your teeth, boring. How about making a sandwich? That's more fun. Do you want to make an excellent sandwich? And do you want to do it with excellence? Whatever that involves for you. Holding your philosophical question about what is making the sandwich. Holding on to your breath, if your breath control, if that's part of your spiritual exercises. getting the excellent amount of peanut butter to jelly ratio on your sandwich. If you think that's meaningful, because that kind of focus, that kind of question or inner mantra, that kind of breath work, and that kind of peanut butter and jelly ratio is important to you personally, then it can also surface your problems. So again, bringing in the idea of excellence can surface some aspect. So surface an aspect. So in learning, the pathologos has aspects. Right, some good questions have come from drawing the dream out. Right, that's a good one. Right, and if you look at those videos of Pierre Grimes doing dream analysis that you can find on YouTube, that's one technique that he used was to use stick figures to draw the dream out. And that can surface some things you might not have seen. To explain why we do not pursue our highest aspirations and why we do not learn from our mistakes. Okay, so given what he just said, that pursuing our meaningful goals or doing whatever we do with excellence is so important because it uses the time here productively, efficiently, or in alignment with a purpose, because doing that, pursuing our highest goals or pursuing it with excellence, will surface the pathologos or aspects of it. So therefore, you can say not pursuing our highest goals or not doing it with excellence would be evidence of a problem. Especially if you've gotten this far in this video, because you have come far enough in your life, in your learning, in your incarnations to come across this message that, hey, pursue your meaningful goals with excellence. Why? Because that's going to surface the aspects of your pathologos that are understandable and will free you from your self-imposed ignorance and suffering and failures and blocking you from your inner development. So do it. If you've come across that, then not doing it, not pursuing your highest aspirations with excellence, and not learning from your mistakes is a problem. Therefore, to explain why we do not pursue our highest aspirations and why we do not learn from our mistakes is the goal of this work. So if this is the opening chapter and our author is saying this is the goal of the work, when we get to the end of the book, we should be able to go back from to the start and read this again and say, hey, did we explain why we don't pursue our highest aspirations? Did we explain why we don't learn from our mistakes? We should, if we've read well and it's written well. So let's take that with us in our back pocket as a question. Before I venture into an explanation of that most curious fact, I would like to say how I came to adapt this practice of philosophical midwifery to the realm of belief. Now, we've talked about how philosophical midwifery is a term that Socrates used to describe the analogy between philosophy and his mother's art of helping women give birth to babies, but we're giving birth to ideas. Now, for various reasons that we can get into down the line, Plato did not really write about philosophical midwifery applied to the realm of belief. He was more interested in not the purifying from our problems, but perfecting our understanding. So, he was more interested in writing or transcribing the conversations Socrates had about the realm of being. What is justice itself? in the realm of being? What is beauty itself in the realm of being? What is the good itself in the realm of being and maybe beyond? Many times in the book, Socrates mentions, oh, by the way, Glaucon or whoever I'm talking to about beauty itself, you can't go any further because you've got a blocking belief. So you've got to go back and reflect on that and reflect on your dreams. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck. You can't continue to develop your understanding about the realm of being. So many times he mentions using his art in the realm of belief. There are descriptions from other characters, like in the Symposium. Somebody else talks about seeing Socrates talk to blacksmiths and housewives who are not interested or more than likely not interested in the realm of being, but still talking to them with his art, bringing them to tears. But this is something that we can see ourselves when we realize, when we learn this art ourselves. So what our author here, Dr. Pierre Grimes, is doing is adapting this practice to belief, to the realm of belief. Something that is implied in Socrates, but for whatever reason, Socrates didn't write down his own stuff, and it was left to his student Plato to write down his work. But he seemed to miss this area. But fortunately, someone like Dr. Grimes came along and realized this and filled in the gap, and the complementary half to true philosophy. The other half that Socrates was spending his time doing. Curious. Right. If you know enough of the shadows of the good, you can know the shape of the good by negating the shadows. That's interesting. That is one way of using the dialectic. The more we understand about the pathologos, this practice of philosophical midwifery applied to the realm of belief, removing what's false about ourself and reality, we have material to gain a question. Hang on a second. What would be the thing this is a shadow of? What would be midwifery applied to truth? If I'm learning in my problem what it isn't, what would be the opposite? So this is a fun way of using the dialectic. When you get insight about side A, what's true, you could apply it to gain an insight about side B, what's false, and vice versa. So good insight in chat. The name philosophical midwifery comes from, here we go, Plato's dialogue, the Theaetetus. So in the series, we should add this to our reading list. We should get into the Theaetetus at some stage. In that dialogue, Socrates refers to his art as midwifery because he assists in the delivery of men who are pregnant with either true ideas or false beliefs. So those are our two realms. He's applying it to the realm of belief here, but what we normally read in the other half of this channel, the writings of Plato about Socrates, is the true ideas. We want the truth. So there are two aspects. Socrates, Plato wrote about half of it, and Pierre Grimes is filling in the other half. So we are very happy for him doing that.
Wow. 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 Wow.
Interesting. Can you say more about that idea in chat? The art of philosophical midwifery has a long history. Socrates calls it an art. So it's art. That's one question. Why? What makes something an art? Moderns don't have a definition for art. Isn't art whatever you want? Can't you just staple a banana peel to the wall and say that's modern art? So what is an art really? Not the absurd consequences that follow without understanding, but what is it properly? because it's a purely rational method of pursuing questions that benefit the subject. So, what is involved in an art? A rational. Has to be rational. Rational. Purely rational. There has to be a method. And it has to involve questions, and it has to benefit the subject. Interesting. Think about that when you're making art. Now, of the art of medicine, kind of easy to see. Medicine is rational. That's why we have schools. You ask questions to the patient. Where does it hurt? How many times have you put that thing there? Why do you keep doing it? But also, you use your time to benefit the subject. You're not doing medicine to make yourself rich, but to make your subject healthy. So this is aspects to our question, what is an art? Keep that question alive, because maybe there's more than just being purely rational, just having questions, and just benefiting. Those have to be there, but I wonder if there's more involved in art. Interesting. Plato applied it to ideas that blocked one from participating in philosophy. That's what we're talking about. Right? Hey, Glaucon, you can't follow. Ideas that blocked one from participating in philosophy. It reached a high point with Proclus. He applied it to resolve obstacles to understanding Platonic metaphysics. So, maybe down the line in this channel, we'll get into Proclus and we'll get into reading that together on the channel. It'll be fun. However, it ended with the destruction of the classical culture and the closing of Plato's academy. Why did that happen? Because of the Christian emperor Justinian. Oh my goodness. I thought all religious authorities would want to understand and not just believe. What a surprise. A human without the art of midwifery has a problem that motivates his unjust actions. So that idea of, hey, shouldn't everybody be allowed to have false beliefs? Surely someone with, like Emperor Justinian, with objectively false beliefs wouldn't act on it and close Plato's academy. All right, so absurd, but also for ourselves. Hey, shouldn't I be allowed to keep my own false beliefs? Well, hang on a second. What if you act on it and it blocks you from acting in your highest, to your highest benefit? Okay. Ended with the destruction of the classical culture and the closing of Plato's academy by the Christian emperor Justinian in 529 AD. Okay, so we have a historical context for why we have to do the work today, 2,000 years after that, or 1,500 years after that, right now, to rediscover it. So it's going to be different. You might not be able to learn about it at school yet, hopefully soon. But it's not going to be on TV yet, hopefully soon. And this is the historical context for why. You might have to do some more work in explaining that idea. So it sounds like you're trying to relate Christian beliefs to Platonic beliefs. There may be a connection, but you'll have to do the work in separating what's false from what's true. You don't want to throw baby out with the bathwater, whatever it's called. You don't want to mix the two together. It was through philosophical midwifery that Platonic philosophers explored the rational and became rational themselves. Okay, so not only are we understanding the rationality of our problems to free ourselves from them, but the activity itself is a discipline, that is an activity, is a practice, is a fun, awesome game that makes us rational ourselves. We benefit from it. So it's like a win-win. You see the rationality of your problems in a way that you can overcome them, but that activity makes you more rational yourself. Why would that matter? You are changing your way of being. As a philosopher, I regard myself as continuing this tradition called the practice of philosophical midwifery. I have utilized this rational approach with philosophical problems and have adapted it to personal problems. So, in our learning, we are pursuing philosophical problems to reach our highest excellence. These are the most meaningful goals. What is the self? What is the reality? Where did I come from? Where am I going when I die? What should I be doing here? What is actual justice, beauty, goodness? Is there a purpose to my existence? How can I achieve it? What are the levels of enlightenment? How do I understand them? Can they be rationally understood with this purely rational approach that can benefit me so that I can climb from one level of enlightenment to another and understand why they exist the way they do? So these are all a rational approach to philosophical problems, or spiritual development, we could call it. But he has adapted it to personal problems. So this is Dr. Grimes's contribution to the tradition. So that's really great. We are happy for that. And hopefully I will have some confetti. I've got to get this confetti thing down a bit better. There's the confetti. Yay. Okay. Over the ensuing years, I have continued to adapt and bring more precision to this practice because I learned how beliefs, including my own, block us from attaining our meaningful goals. Wow. So more precision. Beliefs block us from attaining our meaningful goals. A most curious thing about these beliefs is the tendency with which they are held. The tenacity is how you say that in English. The tenacity. Urgh, like a dog with a bone. With which they are held, even though they are not obvious, and they're only partially known to the believer. That has been a puzzling thing. That's a puzzle me personally I've had. It's always fascinated me how tenaciously people hold on to their ignorance. For me, in part, it was, hang on a second, wouldn't it benefit you to understand better, higher, more accurately? So why are you so opposed to your own benefit, to understanding? That's always puzzled me. And the other part of the puzzle was, why do you hold on so fervently to something that you don't even understand yourself? You don't even understand the nature of the belief that you're defending. It's not obvious to you what you believe. And you only partially know the belief that you're carrying. In spite of that, you are certain that you're right. That's insane. If I only watched half a game of basketball and Michael Jordan came up to give me some advice, I'm like, hang on a second, I know better than that. Well, you only partially know. And all of the things that I'm saying, okay, that's a bad example, because what I'm talking about is the absence of knowledge. This isn't. This is something we believe that we only partially know we is there. It's a kind of ignorance. Okay, so it was curious to him, as it was curious to me. Why do you hold on to your ignorance with such tenacity? When you don't, it's not obvious to you, the belief most of the time, and even the parts you do know, it's only part of it. The opinions and beliefs of others have deeply influenced us and shaped. Okay, so opinions and beliefs. This is what it means to be human. Before we wake up, this channel is called Awakening Philosophy. Interesting. So this channel is called Awakening Philosophy, and until we awaken this, the logos, the dialectic, the understandability and knowability of reality, intelligibility, that's philosophy, then we are in the realm of beliefs and opinions of everyday yokels, the hoi polloi, the great unwashed masses, the many. And what are they interested in? Well, unless they're interested in philosophy, they are opinions and beliefs. So, and they influence us. Welcome to being born a human. So the opinions and beliefs of others, the opinions and beliefs of others have deeply influenced us and shaped what we believe. We are, this is key. It is impossible to know what we are without, so impossible to know what we are. This is key. One of the most important things that we can do, or the highest spiritual or philosophical goal, is to know what we are. What are you? What's the self? What's mind? What is the reach of mind? Are you mind? Is reality mind? Do you have a mind? What is having the mind? What the heck are we? You can't know that without separating ourselves from all that is foreign to the self. Earlier today, we talked about one kind of opinion of others as those that have holy clothes or are not in the latest, trendiest fashion. They are worthless or bad or a bum. Now, we talked about, hang on a second, Socrates pointed that out specifically. This was even a kind of opinion and belief of others that affected Socrates' friends back in that time. And he said we have to separate ourselves from what is foreign to the self in the Phaedo that we're reading. And instead, just share in what is true about the self. And how do we learn what's true about the self? Philosophy. Follow along on the channel. But also, how do we separate ourselves from what is foreign? That seems to be what we're doing here. It is for this reason that Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. If you want a bumper sticker for your car, that's a good one. If you want an Instagram short, use that one. The unexamined life is not worth living. Said Jed. Said Socrates, quoted by Jed. So you can, I'm quoting Dr. Grimes, who's quoting Socrates, but you can just say, the unexamined life is not worth living, inverted commas, Jed, because I said it. So. Then share a link to this channel so other people can learn along with us. Don't say that, yeah. Okay, the method to surface these beliefs, to make them visible. Okay, so now I'm going to change colors because this seems to be a list. As we learn, we have to uncover the key terms in lists. That's how we learn. So the method to surface these beliefs, number 1, to make them visible, number 2, to trace them to the roots, number 3, to understand why we have endured, number 4, and why they have produced such destructive consequences upon one's life, number 5, is the study which I have adapted and developed as philosophical midwifery. So there's our definition at the end. So, this is key. We want to not... So, the author is someone who's mastered the art. As we learn, we are developing, putting the pieces together for ourselves to figure it out. But also, part of the art is also bringing our... Yes. Right. Spoken by Jed, most important. One way of mastering the art is to bring our minds to the level of mind of somebody else who is a master. What do I mean by that? Well, this author is someone who understands it. He understands midwifery. He's mastered the art, understood it, practiced it, even rediscovered it, formalized it, added it to the Platonic or human tradition. So how does he think? In what is the way that he thinks about his own art? How does he understand? We said that we are becoming rational ourselves. What is the rationality that our author is using? Because we want to see the world. If we were a basketball player, we want to see the basketball court like Michael Jordan does. We want to see the football field like Messi does. We want to see the art of midwifery the way Pierre does. So, when he is talking about his art, what does he use to structure his thoughts? He uses a list of 5 things. Surface these beliefs, 1. Make them visible, number 2. Trace them to their roots, number 3. Understand why they have endured, number 4. And why they have produced such destructive consequences on one's life. Were these 5 random things? Why did he pick 5? Why did he put them in this order? I mean, there are lots of ways of expressing, defining philosophical midwifery. You can see the subject in maybe in 10 things, in 2 things. He already described it as separating ourselves from what is false. So why, when giving a definition of philosophical midwifery, did he pick 5? Is that 5 key to the art? Is it the key to dialectic or understanding? What are those 5 categories that we could apply to philosophical midwifery? And maybe apply to anything. Maybe there are 5 such categories in understanding anything, including our problems. I don't know, but keep that in the back of our mind. He decided to use 5 categories: surfacing, making visible, tracing their roots, understanding why they endured, and then seeing their destructive consequences. I don't know, but it's interesting that he used 5. Keep that as a question, because we are going to bring our way up to the thinking the way that is understood by a master of this very art. So that's cool. One of the benefits of learning about it from a master. The same reason we read Socrates' words in the other series in this channel. Right. He is harmonizing the text, tuning it so that we can hear it. Right. So we can, if there is a way of making rational this highest art, then we can maybe even use languages that we learn from other arts like music to describe it analogically. Now, that would be a good way of understanding. Now, we are learning the bad way to apply something that isn't analogical. So, in the chat, he's harmonizing the text, tuning it like a musician so that we can hear it. So that's an example of art. An example of a pathologos problem would be applying something that is not analogical. Maybe an early teacher that we had to survive around before we had this art, only would speak in a way to put you down, was always lying because he wanted to be the center of attention. So we would read that and say, well, why is he using 5 things? I know why, because he's a loudmouth. Because he wants to make you feel stupid. He's using 5 terms to say it because he thinks you're too dumb to understand it with 1 term. He's full of hot air because he wants to be center of attention. Some people think that way. If you've been human for any period of time and you've walked outside, you might have recognized that people might do that to you as well. Project analogically what isn't true about you, but is a reflection of their own problem. You might also find the more excellent you are, or the more beautiful or meaningful you are, or the more excellent or beautiful you're functioning, the more likely it is that people will project that kind of false analogy from their upbringing, reflecting their own problem onto you. Projection. If you're reading Plato and you get to the Republic, or you've heard about the analogy of the cave, you might also recognize that idea of projecting the false beliefs that you carry in your own head in Plato's cave analogy. So, people do that. We are a people, so we will do that. The difference between what's virtue and vice is whether or not we care to understand it and purify ourselves from what causes us to see things poorly or function poorly. In other words, do we want to do this? If we all do it and it's bad and wrong, like inaccurate and harmful, another way of saying that, then what do you want to do about it? Do you want to stop? Become better? See more clearly? Be free of that ignorance that you are imposing upon yourself that will prevent you from seeing clearly and functioning with excellence? If you do want to do that, good for you, and we cheer. If you don't, that's a problem. A problem that you can die with, and maybe will have a consequence into your next life and also the remainder of this life. Or if you don't want to do that, then it's a problem that can itself help you learn about yourself. What's not true? Why do you have a block? To learning how to remove your blocks. Maybe you don't want to do it because it's so meaningful. What do meaningful things do? Surface your pathologos problems. So the lack of a desire to master this art is itself evidence of the very thing this art is here to help free you from. Isn't that cool? So not playing the game, you're playing the game anyway. The only question is, do you want to play it well? You're in the game because you're human. Do you want to know the rules and have fun? I don't want to know the rules and have fun. Well, okay. You're in the game anyway. That's going to be a puzzle. Right. It could be that you fear success. It could be that you fear screwing up or not being perfect to start off with. That happens in our culture. You're not perfect straight away, go to prison, get a bad grade. This is ignorance. This is not helping anybody learn. It's just it's a manifestation of whoever's doing that problems onto you because they have a position of authority. We all know that. We all know people in positions of authority who project their problems onto others instead of discovering it for themselves and benefiting from the art of philosophical midwifery. There might be many reasons. The thing is, if you're not interested in mastering this art and benefiting, and instead you are holding on with tenacity the false beliefs that are not obvious to you and you only partially know yourself, then that is what we can surface and free ourselves from in this art. So, This is huge. We're seeing that we are rational beings. And even our desire to act irrationally is itself rational and is a clue, is a gift, so long as we are in this game of midwifery. Just like the texts, the puzzles that Socrates give us in our other reading are gifts that you will not get unless you know how to unwrap it with the logos, the dialectic. Just like dreams are gifts that you will not get to receive unless you unpack it with the art of the logos or the dialect, which happens to be apparently the same art. The difference is Dr. Grimes is saying, I applied it to the realm of our problems, our certain class of false beliefs. The same art that we can apply to the realm of ideas or being in philosophy. The same art we can apply to our dreams. In other words, it seems to be one game in town. Like if you play Mario, it's the same controls. Doesn't matter if you're in the level in the sky, the level in the beach, the level under the water. It's still the same game rules, the same physics and same controls. You're just applying it to different settings. And what does that mean? It means we have a singular task we can harmonize everything around. Why do we care about that? Having a singular focus that we can pour our energy into. What happens when an athlete has a singular focus without distractions? That he can use the full force of his being to focus on in an open, curious, fun state of mind. Does that unlock a mysterious state of mind we call being in the zone? Are all those conditions the same in meditation, formal meditation? Having a soul harmonized to a singular purpose, is that the virtue of temperance in the Republic? These are questions that come up for us when we realize what happens here. Shotgun light. Interesting. Oh, okay, you had some lightning in the background. I'm glad this is a cozy stream. Okay, so these are questions that come up. Look for them. Look for patterns. Apply it to your life. Let's breathe life into it for you. Aphrodite with a... I have practiced philosophical midwifery for many years. There are others who have gone through the effort to learn and are practicing this art. It has proven itself to be challenging to learn, as it has been to practice, because it requires a sensitivity to a new mode of understanding. I can attest to this. I have been doing this, learning this and practicing this for 20 years, and I have myself, and I have seen with the others around me who have been learning it, the various kinds of difficulties and challenges that they have had and I have had to developing this new system of understanding. And of course, as we read, doing what is most meaningful is more likely to surface the material we need to reflect in this way. So they're gifts. But also doing something with excellence, the more we do that, the more likely it is to surface our aspects of our problem, giving us the material to use here, the lovely mining gold. And we could say, well, actually, learning philosophical midwifery and practicing it ticks both boxes. It is one, if not the most meaningful thing we can do as a human being. And to do it well, you kind of have to do it with excellence. So we can see why, using what he's already given us, we can see why he's making this statement here. Oh, separated the statements you are using in your dream work. Right, seeing a pattern. That's great. So in applying this to our dreams, you can see there might be certain key terms and patterns that come up that help you to understand them. That's great. Developing them into a system of understanding, a pattern, you can then use it. You're developing a mastership, developing your system. Now, the further we go into this, the more you'll be able to see the system of midwifery, and that might help guide and shape your own personal system. You might notice differences. In fact, seeing the differences, you might ask questions. Why did I not see that? Interesting. That could be more gold for you to reflect on. So good for you. Or you can be like Plato and Pierre and say, hang on, this same system that I'm learning from Socrates, I'm applying it to a different realm. So this could be a question for you. How can I use what I learn here about midwifery and apply it to my work in developing my system for understanding dreams? Right. Leveling up. Very good. It turns around. So this practice to learn, this effort to learn and practice the art, it turns around the most basic ideas and gives them an entirely new meaning. Wow.
Wow.
Ideas such as, here is a list. So we want to learn the list, but also wonder, why do you list it in this way? Caring, belief, blame, love, knowledge, understanding, the meaning of relationships, the raising of children. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is there a significance to a list of 8? What is the significance? Is there an order to which he gave them? I don't know. But generally speaking, as we go through this study, we are going to learn a entirely new meaning of what caring is. Wow. Challenging. But my mother was caring and she was a saint. Nope, you're going to learn a new one. No, never. Hang on, are you being fervently attached to a belief about caring that you might not even know you have? Or even if you don't know, you only know a small part of it is visible to you? Yeah. Because I love my mum. She's bloomin' brilliant. Oh, is that a puzzle that you're clinging to something you don't even know? Or you're only aware of a small part of? Without actually learning the model? Yeah, it is kind of weird. Ooh. That was the problem. That was the kind of puzzle that led Dr. Grimes into developing an understanding of why. Why have a self-imposed limiting belief? Maybe it's something to do with what we think it means to be caring. Hey, to be caring is to just pretend our loved ones know everything. To pretend our loved ones know what it means to be caring without doing midwifery or philosophy. Play dumb. Right? Wrong. What? No? Do you mean I have to develop a new idea of caring? That's what it's saying. But I don't think that way. Good. Now you're reading. Reading involves seeing the mind of the author and, as we read earlier, separating ourselves to what is foreign from self. So the self of the text, we have to separate what is foreign. I don't think you have to learn a new language of caring to solve human problems. Good. Put that in a list. List B. That's something that you believe. We have to separate that from side A, what the author is saying. That is a belief that is foreign to the text. This is why even reading is a potential for spiritual development or a potential for philosophical midwifery. Separate what is false, foreign, from what is true. Especially in this. So have a notebook open, have a pad open, I don't agree with the author in these reasons. Good, write it down. Keep an open mind. Keep in mind, these are gold. This is gold for you. These are going to come to great insights later once you see it all. Right? Challenging. Are you up to the challenge? Of course you are, because if you're up to the challenge, you get a lovely round of applause. So, new ideas of caring, new understanding of belief, blame, love, knowledge, understanding. Yeah. Anybody interested in and our reading group will know knowledge and understanding, big ones in the Phaedo. Completely different meaning that we learn from Socrates. Relationships and raising of children. They are each given a new context, which in turn gives a depth of understanding into the human drama. So our human dramas are rational and we're learning a depth of understanding. This new context supposes a new model for understanding. And since it is a fundamental shift, we call it a new paradigm. If you're reading this text, you are being challenged and invited and encouraged to completely change your mind. Wow. How easy is it for someone to change their mind? Especially if they're older. The older we get, usually the more difficult it is to change our mind. We are being told we need to change our mind to master this art of all arts, or one of the, if not the most important art. That's okay. We can recognize the difficulty because we recognize this kind of fundamental shift into a new model of understanding has a name, a paradigm shift into a new paradigm. Therefore, as we have difficulties, we can say, that's okay. We're going through a paradigm shift. Of course, my opinions are going to be different. Of course, this is a whole new way of relating to the human drama because it's called a paradigm shift. So because we have that understanding, a new paradigm, in fact, we are calling this the new paradigm. This is something Dr. Grimes said himself. He should have changed the name. Because it's our new paradigm, we're not going to have problems changing our mind. We're going to be completely okay with changing our mind, and any challenges that come up, go, oh no, it's natural. We're having a paradigm shift. Of course I'm going to have these thoughts. But because we have the word, it's going to make it easy. That's good news. What happened here? Why is this here? Okay. So, I'm accidentally deleting all of my... Is there a redo button? Okay. Just leave that. Leave that. Why can't I undo this highlight? Oh, that's how you do it. All right. So, called a new paradigm. Fundamental shift. New model of understanding. For those who have succeeded in reaching this new understanding, so another good thing for us, people have succeeded. It has brought them into a greater mental well-being. These are the boons and benefits we will get if we do this. Greater mental well-being and a more profound appreciation of things of the mind. Wow. That's what we're in for. So yes, it was a shift, control, undo. Anyway, that's what we're in for, right? Right. And so we might, the more we learn this model, the more we might see that when we are functioning with excellence, we are kind of doing it anyway sometimes, but we can do it consciously. with greater artfulness. We find that this art draws its subjects into things of the mind, into a new mode of understanding. Things of the mind. Into a more mature kind of relationship. Oh my God, everything is so good in this. With their fellow man. Okay? So we'll be talking about differentiating this from the ignorance that has plagued history since 529 AD, when the Platonic Academy was shut down. The Dark Ages, we call it. Are we having a immature relationship with our fellow man right now? Yes. How do we solve that problem? Well, maybe this. And while it does this, it also reveals something very significant about the nature of the human suffering it addresses. So we're learning about human suffering. In going through the process, they have learned to recognize the marks of a problem. That's interesting. With the art, you can recognize marks of a problem. Oh, like a midwife can recognize signs of pregnancy. And they have learned why one's normal way of relating conceals its presence. Oh. Hey, somebody came into the chat before and started, and with their normal way of relating. It was weird for us because we don't know the guy or what culture or family he's from. But for him, it's a normal way of relating that will conceal the presence of his problem, rather than an honest, mature way of relating, reflecting on his mind that could bring forth the presence of a problem that can be material for reflection in this kind of way. In this environment, you might say, well, hang on a second. Ain't not too many philosophical midwives about. They have that less mature way of relating, that a problem is an excuse to act out their tyranny because, hey, that's punishment. We get to act out our injustice because we pretend that it's making you better or teaching you a lesson. Like all of my action heroes who punch the bad guys. Punch, 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 punch. And I feel good because I'm being unjust, but it's okay because that person is less. Very immature and irrational way of relating to our fellow human man. So we might say, well, if most people are motivated by that and not this, maybe it's a kind of solution, an adaptation to conceal the presence of a problem around such people who are motivated by such ignorance. But in this community that you can join, you can follow and subscribe on YouTube, you can join the Discord, you can support on Patreon. We are doing our best to promote the opposite, encourage reflections, dropping the masks, helping each other see for ourselves a problem and reflect on it in a way that can benefit ourselves, lead us into a more mature kind of relationship, a new mode of understanding. That's what we're about here on the channel. Okay. Right. Question from the chat. Could we recreate the Socratics if we know enough Plato? Well, I think you could say what we're doing is, we are Plato is transcribing the words of Socrates. This text is filling in the sections that Plato wasn't able to do. And there are reasons why Plato maybe never got to this level, even though there's evidence that Socrates was doing this too. Okay, Socrates was himself murdered when his student Plato was quite young. So you could say, Dr. Grimes rediscovered what Socrates was doing, and then later found, oh my God, this is what Socrates was doing. So that's why we don't call it Platonic philosophy, so to speak, because that sounds like it's one philosophy among many. So you're right. If we use the mind to understand the mind, like we're learning how to do here, we'll recreate Socrates. So it's like not a philosophy, it's the philosophy. And another way of saying it's not a new paradigm, it might be the paradigm. from which our problems tell us about the negative consequences that follow deviations from the paradigm. The mature relationship, the interest in the things of the mind, the profound appreciation for things of the mind, and the greater well-being that we have by aligning ourselves with the true paradigm. Just as we are aligning ourselves with the mind of the author, who has himself aligned himself to create this art. We're doing that by reading. So good for us. This kind of seeing that's right. I can't quite afford chocolate cookies at the moment, but yes, good suggestion. Have some chocolate cookies with your coffee. And if you support the channel on Patreon, I might be able to buy some. Okay. From this point of view, that's a joke. You don't have to support them. If you think this channel is worth supporting, please do. And I'm not going to spend it on chocolate cookies. I'm going to spend it on improving the stream and keeping the stream going. And doing other things in the stream. There's lots of other things we can get into that are applying the logos to understanding them. From this point, one can no longer be satisfied with surface explanations of human behavior. Oh, he does that because he's a minority, because she's a woman, because she's not Christian, blah, blah, blah. Not satisfied with that. Okay. One participants learn this art. They realize how enriching it can be. It can make all their relationships, and how they can experience this kind of understanding in other areas of their life, right? We talked about understanding music. Right. And as I was mentioning, there's lots of things we could do once this channel picks up a bit more steam and support. We can understand the dialectic or logos, the art of music. And not just master the art of music, but use it to shine more light on this art. They help each other. Or geometry. Is there a way of understanding the dialectic applied to understanding the whole of geometry? We talked about in today's stream the different interpretations of the logos in the various characters within the Bible. And we talked about the different Plato's interpretation of Socrates, and how we have to do some work to understand how they differ from the original and the consequences of that difference. There is a book by the author of this art, Dr. Pierre Grimes, the last book he published before he moved on. Jesus and Socrates, a dialogue in heaven, which gives us the ability to understand and unpack these questions. What's the difference between what John is doing and Mark is doing? What's the difference between Luke, what Luke is doing in the Gospels? What is Paul doing that's different? What's Plato doing that's different from Socrates? What's the difference between us learning about Socrates through Plato compared to us learning about Jesus through Paul? Are there different ways of understanding or interpreting? Can they be understood? Can they be ranked? Do some bring problems that have affected our lives and human society? Can we use this understanding to purify those problems the same way we're learning how to purify problems in midwifery? Could it be the same structure? Could we solve these puzzles? These are all questions within the text Socrates and Plato, A Dialogue in Heaven, which is a fantastic book. And maybe down the line, the channel will get into reading that. And of course, the more people interested and have the means to support through Patreon, the more time we will have to get into that as well. So, possible goals of mastership, meaningful goals that we will seek to master with excellence. in the future, maybe for this channel. So what's that? So, we're applying this to enrich our relationships with other ideas, this kind of understanding in other areas of our life. With this realization, it is natural for them to have an interest in mastering this art. So hopefully, as we get into this, we will unlock or awaken a natural interest for us to master this art. Good for us. Hooray. Right. Right. Maybe I should get somebody on my marketing team. The application of philosophical midwifery to the level of personal problems is the result of my own research. A research that began when I sought answers to my own personal problems. I would like to explain how I came to revive and adapt this art to a new class of human problems, okay? Reiterating this point. It is a revival of what we left with Socrates, which is why we read Socrates with the original Greek in the other playlists on this channel. And it's an adaptation because we don't have documentation of Socrates having this application of his art to the realm of belief. He mentions it many times and it's alluded to many times. So it's a revival of the new paradigm of the ancient wisdom paradigm, true philosophy, but it's also an adaptation from what we can read from Socrates into the realm of beliefs to deal with a new class of human problems. So very, very exciting stuff. Okay, so I think that might be a good cliffhanger to end on. How did he get into it? How did he revive this ancient spiritual, intellectual understanding tradition, this ancient paradigm? How did he adapt it? And so we're gaining a history and background of this very art that hopefully we will awaken a natural interest in mastering ourselves. And hey, maybe sharing it with others to benefit the human race itself. Wouldn't that be interesting to see? So, on that cliffhanger, that question, puzzle, idea, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for joining me in chat. Thank you for watching on YouTube. Feel free to like and subscribe. Share it with your friends if they're interested. If you think they might be interested, maybe. Of course, watch along live on Twitch or YouTube. You can support on Patreon if you want to. That's greatly appreciated. And check out the other streams we have on the other half of this art. If this is the purification of our problems, using that freedom from our problems to seek not just so this is the art applied to our false beliefs that cause our problems. Use that freedom maybe to reach our most meaningful goals, applying the same art to reality, the ideas about reality. Of course, they complement each other. You can't really do one properly without the other. So check out those two. Bigger net catches more fish. Absolutely, in the chat. Thank you so much for joining me. And I hope to see you next time. And I hope between now and then, you've naturally awakened an interest in mastering this art and sharing in this greatest paradigm, ideal paradigm that we might have as one of our key purposes for being alive here. You're in the game anyway. Why not master it? Learn the rules and master it. And enjoy a greater sense of well-being and profound appreciation for the mind because of it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.